The first signs of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in April. I was reviewing investment reports in my study when my sister Victoria called. Her voice dripped with artificial concern. "Emily, darling, I heard about the headaches. Are you seeing a specialist?" I paused, pen hovering over the financial statement I'd been annotating. "What headaches?" "Oh." Victoria's surprise sounded rehearsed. "Haven't you been experiencing terrible migraines? Everyone's worried sick. Mother mentioned you've been having dizzy spells too." This was news to me. At 34, I was in perfect health, running my late father's investment firm while raising my 8-year-old son, James. The only headache in my life was Victoria's constant interference. "I'm perfectly fine," I replied, keeping my voice neutral while making a mental note of this strange conversation. "Who's everyone?" "Just concerned family members. You know how rumors spread." She paused. "How's little James doing?" The way she said my son's name sent a chill down my spine. Victoria had always shown an unsettling interest in James. Ever since my husband Michael died in a climbing accident 3 years ago, she'd even offered to take him off my hands during the funeral. "James is wonderful. We're both wonderful. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting." After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair, mind racing. This wasn't the first odd incident lately. Last week, my mother had insisted I looked peaky at Sunday dinner. The family doctor, who I hadn't scheduled an appointment with, supposedly called asking about my symptoms. Even my housekeeper mentioned overhearing concerns about my health from the country club ladies. Someone was laying groundwork, but for what? I opened my laptop and began documenting these occurrences, a habit I'd developed after Michael's death. Victoria had tried to contest his will then, claiming I was too unstable to manage his estate. She failed, but the experience taught me to keep careful records. The next red flag appeared 2 days later. My assistant Sandra rushed into my office, face pale. "Ms. Wilson, there's a Dr. Harrison here to see you. He says it's urgent." I didn't know any Dr. Harrison. "I don't have an appointment. He says your sister sent him. He's very insistent." The pieces clicked into place. I smiled. Sent him in. Dr. Theodore Harrison was exactly what I expected. Distinguished, silver-haired, carrying an air of authority that probably convinced most people not to question him. I noticed he carried a medical bag that looked straight out of a period drama. "Ms. Wilson, I'm deeply concerned about your condition." He sat without being invited. "Your family reports severe symptoms that could indicate—" "Who's paying you?" I interrupted. He blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "For this performance, Victoria? Or did my mother hire you?" I leaned forward. "Because I have to tell you, showing up uninvited at my office with a fake medical bag is bordering on criminal impersonation." Color drained from his face. "Ms. Wilson, I assure you." "Shall I call the medical board?" "I'm sure they'd be interested in a doctor who makes unsolicited office visits based on third-party reports." He stood quickly. Perhaps I was misinformed. "Good day, Ms. Wilson." After he left, I added this incident to my growing file. Victoria was planning something, but what? The answer arrived that evening when I returned home. James rushed to greet me, his dark curls bouncing. "Mom, Aunt Victoria brought me a new game." I froze. Aunt Victoria was here. My housekeeper Margaret appeared, wringing her hands. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Wilson. She said you knew she was coming. She spent an hour with James, took photos of his room, said she was planning a renovation surprise for you." My blood ran cold. Victoria had been in my house with my son, documenting his personal space. Combined with the health rumors and fake doctor, a picture was emerging. My sister wasn't just laying groundwork. She was building a case. I called my lawyer, Benjamin Gates, that night after James was asleep. "Someone's trying to have me declared incompetent," I said without preamble. Ben had defended me against Victoria's previous attempts to seize control of Michael's estate. He understood immediately. The sister again? She's spreading health rumors, sent a fake doctor to my office. Today she was photographing James's room. I took a deep breath. She's going to try for guardianship, isn't she? Of James and the estate. It fits her pattern. Do you have documentation? Everything. Dates, witnesses, recordings of conversations. Hood, forward it all. We'll file for a restraining order first thing. A crash from downstairs cut him off. Then James screamed. I dropped the phone and ran. The scene in our kitchen stopped my heart. James lay unconscious on the floor, a broken glass beside him. Margaret knelt nearby, checking his pulse. "He just collapsed," she cried. "I was getting his bedtime snack end." I never heard the rest. Something struck the back of my head, hard. As consciousness faded, I caught a glimpse of designer heels, Victoria's favorite Louboutins. "Sorry, sister dear." Her voice floated above me. "But you're just too sick to care for James anymore." Then darkness took me. I awoke to beeping machines and white walls. A hospital room. My head throbbed where I'd been struck. As awareness returned, panic set in. James. Where was James? I tried to sit up, but found my wrists restrained. A nurse rushed in. "Please calm down, Ms. Wilson. You're in good hands. My son is safe with his aunt. She's been granted temporary emergency guardianship given your condition." The pieces fell into place. Victoria had orchestrated everything. The health rumors, the fake doctor, the witnesses to my supposed instability. Now she had James. "I need to speak to my lawyer," I demanded. The nurse smiled sympathetically. "I'm afraid that's not possible in your current state. Doctor's orders. Now rest." Over the next days, I pieced together Victoria's plan through overheard conversations and glimpses of paperwork. I'd been admitted for acute psychotic episodes and paranoid delusions. Victoria, concerned about my deteriorating mental state, had installed cameras in my house, capturing my erratic behavior and neglect of James. The evidence was overwhelming. Every conversation I'd documented, every precaution I'd taken, now painted a picture of paranoia. I'd played right into her hands. But Victoria had made one crucial mistake. She assumed that once she had me committed, I'd be powerless. She forgot that I was my father's daughter too. On my 5th night in the hospital, a young orderly named Marcus brought my evening medication. Unlike the other staff, he looked me in the eye. "The blue pill is new," I said quietly. He nodded. "Started today." I smiled. I don't take medication without reviewing the literature first. Hospital policy allows me to refuse treatment. Marcus glanced at the door. They'll force the issue. They can try. I met his gaze. "How much does night shift pay here, Marcus?" He blinked. "Excuse me." "Because I can offer better. Much better." 2 hours later, I was presumed dead from an allergic reaction to the new medication. Marcus, whose sister coincidentally worked in the morgue, helped facilitate my transfer to the funeral home. Victoria had taken my son, my company, my life. Now I would take everything from her, starting with my own funeral. I spent the next week in a safe house, monitoring Victoria's movements through the PI I'd hired. She worked fast, consolidating her control over my assets while playing the grieving sister. She moved James into her house immediately. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday at St. Michael's Cathedral. Victoria spared no expense, inviting hundreds of guests to witness her performance as the devoted sister tragically inheriting her unstable siblings' responsibilities. I watched the live security feed as guests arrived. Victoria held James's hand tightly, accepting condolences with practiced grace. My mother dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Board members and business associates filed in, already courting Victoria's favor as the new head of Wilson Investments. The service began. Victoria approached the podium, champagne glass in hand for the final toast. Classic Victoria, turning a funeral into a celebration of her triumph. "My beloved sister Emily," she began, voice trembling perfectly. Though troubled in her final days, she would want us to celebrate life, to honor her memory by ensuring her son and her company are properly cared for. She raised her glass. To Emily, finally at peace, and to new beginnings. The massive cathedral doors creaked open. Sorry I'm late to my own funeral. My heels clicked against marble as I walked down the aisle. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering at her feet. Gasps and screams erupted through the congregation. My mother fainted dead away, but I only had eyes for one person. "James," I called softly. "Come to Mommy." My son broke free from Victoria's grip and ran to me. I lifted him into my arms, breathing in his familiar scent. Victoria stood frozen, face ashen. "But you're dead." I saw the death certificate. The body. "You saw what you wanted to see," I smiled. "Just like I wanted you to." The doors opened again. Police officers filed in, led by Benjamin Gates. "Victoria Wilson," the lead detective announced. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy." As they led my sister away in handcuffs, I held James close. Victoria had forgotten the most important lesson our father taught us. Never underestimate someone with nothing left to lose. But my sister's arrest was just the beginning. The real war for Wilson Investments was about to begin. And this time, I wasn't playing defense. The media called it the funeral resurrection. Security footage of my entrance into St. Michael's Cathedral went viral within hours. Local news vans surrounded Wilson Tower, desperate for comments about the CEO who came back from the dead to expose her sister's plot. But I had more pressing concerns. The formaldehyde smell won't leave my hair. I complained to Marcus, the orderly who'd helped fake my death. He now sat in my restored office, accepting a check that would ensure his sister in the morgue remained equally helpful if questioned. "Small price for justice," he replied, tucking the check away. Though I admit, watching Mrs. Victoria's face when you walked in, that was priceless. I smiled, remembering my sister's champagne glass shattering on the cathedral floor. How was she enjoying her accommodations? County jail's finest cell. No Louboutins allowed. Victoria had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk due to her substantial offshore accounts. Accounts I discovered and frozen just hours after my resurrection, using emergency powers as the reinstated CEO. A knock at my office door interrupted us. Benjamin Gates entered, looking pleased. "The board just finished their emergency session," my lawyer announced. "They've officially rescinded all changes made during your absence." "And the guardianship papers for James?" "Nullified." The judge was particularly interested in the forged medical records. Victoria's hired doctor rolled over completely, gave up everyone involved. I nodded, unsurprised. Dr. Harrison had seemed the type to save himself when cornered. What about Mother? Ben's expression darkened. That's more complicated. The police found evidence she was involved in planning your commitment, but proving criminal intent. I don't want her arrested. I stood, walking to the window overlooking Boston's financial district. I want her ruined. My mother, Elizabeth Wilson, had orchestrated family dynamics since I was a child. She'd always favored Victoria, the daughter who embraced her social climbing schemes. When my father died, leaving me in charge of Wilson Investments, Mother had seen it as a personal insult. Now she'd helped Victoria try to steal everything, including my son. The annual shareholders' meeting is next week, I mused. Mother still holds 20% of company shares through her trust. Ben raised an eyebrow. Inherited from your father. Irrevocable. Nothing's irrevocable if you know where to look. I turned back to my desk, pulling up an encrypted file. Father left me more than the company. He left me insurance. The file contained years of documentation, questionable property deals, tax evasion schemes, offshore accounts Mother had hidden from Father. He'd known about her financial infidelity, but kept the evidence private, protecting the family name. Release this, Ben warned, and the scandal won't just destroy your mother. It could damage Wilson Investments. Unless, I smiled, unless it comes out during an SEC investigation triggered by Victoria's crimes. Mother becomes collateral damage. The company appears transparent and cooperative. Ruthless. Ben shook his head admiringly. You really are Robert Wilson's daughter. Victoria and Mother forgot that. I closed the laptop. They won't make that mistake again. That evening, I took James for ice cream at our favorite shop near the Common. He'd been quiet since the funeral, processing the trauma of the past weeks. Did Aunt Victoria hurt you? He asked suddenly, chocolate dripping down his cone. I considered how to answer. James was mature for 8, but explaining attempted murder and false imprisonment seemed excessive. Aunt Victoria was confused about what's best for you, I said carefully. She thought she should be your mom instead of me, but she was wrong, and now she has to face consequences for her bad choices. He nodded solemnly. Is she going to jail? Yes, sweetheart, for a long time. Good. He licked his ice cream. She made me eat vegetables with every meal, even breakfast. I laughed, pulling him close. My brilliant boy, focusing on the culinary crimes. The next morning, the SEC investigation I'd orchestrated hit the news. Anonymous sources, carefully selected by Benjamin, revealed evidence of widespread financial misconduct within the Wilson family. Mother's hidden accounts were exposed, along with Victoria's attempts to seize control through fraudulent means. Wilson Investments stock dropped 15% in the first hour of trading. I called an emergency press conference on the steps of our headquarters. Cameras flashed as I approached the podium, James holding my hand. As CEO of Wilson Investments, I am shocked and saddened by these revelations. I began, my voice carrying clearly in the morning air. While I was targeted by those seeking to abuse their positions within the company, my commitment to transparency and ethical business practices remains absolute. I outlined my plan for corporate restructuring, enhanced oversight, and the establishment of a family foundation focused on mental health advocacy, a pointed reference to Victoria's tactics. By market close, our stock had rebounded. The business press praised my decisive leadership in crisis. Major clients privately assured me of their continued confidence. Mother wasn't so fortunate. The scandal destroyed her social standing. Her country club membership was quietly revoked. Charity boards asked her to step down. Former friends suddenly had scheduling conflicts when she called. I found her in the family mansion's conservatory, surrounded by dying orchids she'd neglected during the crisis. "Come to gloat?" she asked without looking up. "Come to give you a choice." I placed a document on the table beside her. "Sign over your shares to James's trust. Admit yourself to a private wellness facility in Switzerland for a year. And this ends. Fight me, and I release everything, including Father's personal journals about your affair with his brother." She finally met my eyes. "You really are going to destroy me. You tried to take my son." My voice was ice. "Be grateful destruction is all I'm offering." The charges against Victoria took months to process. She accepted a plea deal. 15 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. No possibility of parole. I visited her once before she was transferred to federal prison. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit, but her eyes still burned with familiar hatred. "Proud of yourself?" she spat. "You've ruined everything." "No, Victoria, you ruined everything. I just survived." She lunged forward, stopping when her handcuffs caught. "I deserved to run the company. Father knew you were weak," he told me. "Father told you what you wanted to hear. He knew you'd try something like this eventually." I stood to leave. "That's why he left me in charge. I'll get out someday," she called after me. "And when I do, you'll what? Try to kill me again?" I turned back. "That's the difference between us, Victoria. You keep trying the same failed tactics, while I learn from every attack. Come after me or James again, and prison will feel like a vacation resort." Mother spent 18 months in her Swiss retreat before returning to Boston. She sold the mansion, bought a modest condo in Back Bay, and learned to live without social influence. We saw her occasionally at holidays, but the relationship remained cold. James thrived, showing an early aptitude for business that made me suspect he'd run Wilson Investments someday. I hired Marcus as our head of security, rewarding his loyalty with a career path. The orderly's sister moved from the morgue to medical school, her tuition mysteriously paid by an anonymous donor. 2 years after my resurrection, I stood in my father's old office, my office now, studying his portrait above the fireplace. The artist had captured his knowing smile perfectly. "You were right, Dad," I said softly. "Always prepare for betrayal, especially from family. But make the punishment so complete, they never dare try again." A knock at the door interrupted my reflection. My assistant entered with quarterly reports showing record profits. Wilson Investments hadn't just survived the scandal. We'd emerged stronger. I signed the reports, my signature bold and clear. Emily Wilson, CEO. Victoria had tried to steal my life, my son, my company. Instead, she'd given me the opportunity to prove exactly why Father had chosen me as his successor. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving in ways your enemies never imagined possible. As I looked out over the city, I now truly controlled. I smiled. Victoria rotted in prison. Mother lived in social exile. And I had everything they tried to take from me. Plus the one thing they never had, the absolute certainty that I'd earned it all. The sun set behind the Boston skyline, painting the city in shades of victory. 3 months ago, I died in a tragic hiking accident at Cascade Falls. At least, that's what my sister Diana told everyone. The reality was far more complicated and much darker. I watched a local news report from a motel room 50 miles outside of Seattle, my coffee growing cold as the anchor solemnly described my fatal fall. Sarah Mitchell, 32, was reported missing after failing to return from a solo hiking trip, the anchor read. After an extensive 3-day search, authorities discovered signs of a tragic accident near the Upper Falls. While no body has been recovered, experts believe survival would have been impossible given the conditions. The camera cut to Diana, her perfect face streaked with artfully applied tears. "She was my best friend," she sobbed. "My only sister. I can't believe she's gone." I turned off the TV, my hands shaking with anger. Best friend. Right? That would be why she'd taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months before my accident. The truth was, I hadn't been anywhere near Cascade Falls that day. I'd been in my Seattle apartment, preparing for a business trip to Phoenix, when I got the call that changed everything. "Ms. Mitchell." The voice had been professional, cautious. "This is Agent Cooper with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Do you have a moment to discuss your sister, Diana Mitchell?" That call had saved my life, because Agent Cooper had evidence that Diana had been planning my death for months. Bank records showing massive debt. A newly purchased life insurance policy with herself as sole beneficiary. Suspicious internet searches about untraceable poisons and accidents that look natural. "We believe your sister may be planning to harm you," Agent Cooper had said. "We need your help to catch her before she succeeds." And so began my death. A carefully orchestrated disappearance, staged to look exactly like what Diana had been planning. The FBI had helped me vanish, leaving just enough evidence at Cascade Falls to make my accident convincing. For 3 months, I'd watched from the shadows as Diana played her role perfectly. The grieving sister, devastated by loss, but bravely carrying on. She'd even started a foundation in my name, though I had no doubt where that money was really going. Now, sitting in my motel room with case files spread across the bed, I was finally ready to come back to life. The insurance company deposited the funds this morning, Agent Cooper confirmed over the phone. $5 million, straight into her account. We have the transfer records. And the foundation donations, already traced to offshore accounts. Your sister's been busy. I picked up a photo taken just yesterday, Diana at a luxury car dealership, writing a check for a new Mercedes, grieving in style. "The funeral's tomorrow," I said. "Everything ready?" "Teams are in position. Just remember to wait for my signal before you make your entrance." I smiled, thinking of Diana's face when she saw me. "Oh, don't worry. I want this to be perfect." Perfect, like Diana had always been. Perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect life. While I was the awkward one, the plain one, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our parents' death 5 years ago had only widened the gap. Diana had gotten the lion's share of the inheritance naturally. The golden child. I'd gotten just enough to start my own business. A small tech consulting firm that had finally started to become successful. Too successful, apparently. Diana had borrowed heavily against her inheritance, making risky investments that didn't pay off. By the time she took out the life insurance policy on me, she was nearly bankrupt. I'd never seen it coming. That's what hurt the most. Even knowing how shallow she was, how self-centered, I'd never imagined she'd try to kill her own sister for money. A knock at my motel room door made me jump. Agent Cooper stood outside, a garment bag over her arm. "Thought you might want to dress appropriately for your own funeral," she said, hanging the bag on the door. Inside was a sleek black dress, elegant but understated, perfect for a ghost returning to haunt her killer. The wires built into the neckline, Cooper explained. Completely invisible, but it'll pick up everything. And the cameras. She handed me a pair of designer sunglasses. Built in. Everything will be recorded from your perspective. I tried them on, studying my reflection. With my dark hair pulled back severely and dramatic makeup, I'd barely recognized myself. Good. The less I looked like the old Sarah, the more dramatic the reveal would be. Your sister hired someone to help stage the accident, Cooper said, watching me prepare. A local guide who was supposed to verify seeing you on the trail that day. He rolled over on her as soon as we showed him the evidence. His testimony alone would convict her. But that's not enough, is it? I turned from the mirror. You want her to confess. On camera, wearing a wire, with 50 witnesses. Cooper nodded. No wiggle room. No legal gray areas. Just pure, incontrovertible proof of premeditated fraud and attempted murder. I thought of all the times Diana had overshadowed me, dismissed me, treated me like an afterthought in her perfect life. Tomorrow, she'd learn just how big a mistake she'd made in underestimating me. Get some sleep, Cooper advised. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing the evidence, making sure every detail was perfect. Bank statements showing the money trail. Emails between Diana and the guide discussing the accident. The life insurance policy taken out with forged signatures and backdated documents. Most damning of all were the text messages we'd recovered from Diana's cloud backup. Messages to her boyfriend, Marcus, laying out the whole plan. Sarah's finally worth more dead than alive, she'd written. Once the insurance pays out, we'll have everything we ever wanted. Marcus, to his credit, had been horrified. He'd broken up with her immediately and gone straight to the FBI. His statement was part of the evidence package. Dawn found me still awake, watching the sun rise over the Seattle skyline. In 6 hours, I'd be attending my own funeral. In 7, my sister's life would implode. The church was one of those grand old buildings in the historic district, all Gothic spires and stained glass. Diana had chosen it for maximum dramatic effect, no doubt. The parking lot was already full when we arrived. She'd invited hundreds of people to witness her performance. Remember, Cooper said as we parked a block away, wait for my signal. We need her to incriminate herself before you make your entrance. I nodded, adjusting my sunglasses. Through the tiny camera, I could see the funeral guests arriving in their somber best. Many were crying. Diana had clearly sold my death well. There she is, Cooper pointed. Diana emerged from a black limousine, stunning in designer mourning wear. Her blonde hair was artfully tousled, her makeup perfect, despite the tears. She clutched Marcus's mother's arm, as if she could barely walk from grief. Marcus himself was conspicuously absent. He'd refused to participate in this farce. Audio check, a voice said in my hidden earpiece. Testing. 1, 2. I spoke softly. Receiving. Cameras online, another voice confirmed. All units in position. This was really happening. After 3 months of hiding, of watching my sister profit from my death, I was about to turn her world upside down. You okay? Cooper asked, noting my expression. I thought about Diana's text messages planning my murder. About the fake grief, the stolen money, the sheer calculated cruelty of it all. I'm perfect, I said. Let's go haunt my sister. The funeral service was exactly as grandiose as I'd expected from Diana. White lilies covered every surface, my supposed favorite flower, though she'd never bothered to learn that I actually preferred sunflowers. A massive portrait of me dominated the altar, clearly photoshopped to match Diana's preferred image of her sister. Guest count is over 300, Agent Cooper murmured in my earpiece as we watched from our hidden position in the church's side entrance. Your sister really went all out. Of course she did, I whispered back. She's playing the role of a lifetime. Through my camera-equipped sunglasses, I recorded everything. The greeting faces, many of whom I barely recognized. The expensive flower arrangements with cards proclaiming in loving memory. The donation box for the fraudulent foundation Diana had started in my name. Target approaching microphone, another agent reported. Showtime. Diana glided to the podium like an actress taking center stage. Her black channel dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The insurance money was clearly already being put to use. My beloved sister, she began, her voice trembling perfectly. My Sarah. My best friend. I had to admire her performance. The slight catch in her voice, the elegant dab at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. It was masterful. Sarah was more than just my sister, Diana continued. She was my rock, my conscience, my greatest supporter. Through my earpiece, I heard Agent Cooper snort softly. We'd both read the text messages where Diana had called me a useless burden and plotted my death. When she went missing that day, Diana's voice broke beautifully. I knew something was wrong. Sarah was so careful, so responsible. She would never have taken risks on that trail. Actually, I was an experienced hiker who tackled much harder trails than Cascade Falls. But Diana had never bothered to learn that about me either. The foundation we've started in her name, she went on, will help other families dealing with similar tragedies. Already, your generous donations have made such a difference. Money transfer confirmed, an FBI analyst reported in my earpiece. Another 100,000 moved offshore this morning. I smiled coldly. Diana hadn't wasted any time laundering the foundation money through her network of shell companies. I just wish. Diana dabbed her eyes again. I just wish I'd been able to say goodbye, to tell her how much I loved her. Target is moving to phase 2, Cooper murmured. Get ready. Right on cue, Diana's voice strengthened with false resolve. But Sarah wouldn't want us to dwell in sadness. She'd want us to celebrate her life. That's why, in her memory, I'm announcing a new initiative. She went on to describe an elaborate charitable program that would never exist. More ways to collect donations, more schemes to steal money in my name. We've got it all, Cooper confirmed. The foundation fraud, the insurance scam, everything. Time for phase 3. I watched as one of our undercover agents approached the podium, handed Diana a note. Her performance didn't slip for a second as she read it. Oh, she said softly into the microphone. I've just been informed that they may have found something at the falls. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was the moment Diana had planned carefully, a dramatic announcement that would cement the story of my death and eliminate any lingering questions. The search teams, her voice shook, they've discovered evidence, personal items that confirm. She pressed the handkerchief to her mouth. That confirmed my beloved sister is truly gone. The congregation erupted in fresh grief. Diana sank gracefully into her seat, accepting comfort from the wealthy socialites she'd invited to witness her performance. All units in position, Cooper said tersely. waiting for the signal. I watched through my camera as Diana leaned close to one of her friends, whispering something that made them both smile slightly, probably already planning how to spend more of my insurance money. "The insurance company's fraud department is standing by," another agent reported. "They're ready to freeze the accounts on your word." Diana stood again, moving back to the podium. This was it, the final act of her performance. The part where she would give a touching speech about accepting closure and moving forward, about honoring my memory through her foundation. "Sarah would be so touched by this outpouring of love," she began. "By your generosity, your support." "Now," Cooper said firmly, "go." I took a deep breath and stepped through the side door. The first person to notice me was an elderly woman in the back row. Her gasp was audible even over Diana's speech. Then another person saw me, and another. The whispers spread like wildfire through the congregation. Diana, caught up in her performance, didn't notice at first. "And though we may never fully recover from this loss," she continued. "Diana," I said clearly, my voice carrying through the church's perfect acoustics, "I think you've recovered just fine. The new Mercedes proves that." She froze. For just a moment, her perfect mask slipped, revealing naked shock and something else, fury. Then she screamed. It wasn't the practiced, elegant cry of her performance. This was raw, primal, real. She staggered back from the podium as I walked slowly up the center aisle. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't possible." "What's wrong, sister?" I asked pleasantly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "You're dead," she said. "You're dead. I made sure." She cut herself off, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like a confession. "You made sure," I repeated, still advancing. "Made sure how, exactly?" "By hiring someone to verify my presence on a trail I never visited." "By forging documents?" "By planning my accident down to the last detail." "I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to recover. "Sarah, I've been so worried." "Where have you been?" "Cut the act," I said coldly. "The FBI has everything. The insurance fraud, the foundation scam, the text messages planning my murder." On cue, Agent Cooper and her team emerged from their positions around the church. Diana's eyes darted between them like a trapped animal. "This is ridiculous," she laughed nervously. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, reaching the podium, "was you thinking you could get away with this." I turned to face the shocked congregation. "My sister took out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months ago. She hired someone to help fake my death. She's been stealing donation money through a fraudulent foundation. And now," I smiled coldly at Diana, "now she's going to face the consequences." "You can't prove anything," she hissed. I tapped my sunglasses. "Actually, I just did. This entire conversation is being recorded, including your little slip about making sure I was dead." The color drained from her face. "Ms. Diana Mitchell." Agent Cooper stepped forward, badge displayed. "You're under arrest for insurance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." As Cooper began reading Diana her rights, I surveyed the gathered crowd. The shocked faces, the dawning understanding, the cameras already coming out to record this spectacular moment. Diana had wanted an audience for her performance. Now she had one for her downfall. It was perfect. "Diana Mitchell, how do you plead?" The courtroom was packed 3 months after my funeral. Diana stood at the defendant's table, wearing a carefully chosen pale blue suit that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her attorney had clearly coached her on appearance. Gone were the designer labels and perfect makeup. This was Diana 2.0, the misunderstood sister. Not guilty, Your Honor. I sat in the front row, directly in her line of sight. She hadn't looked at me once since being let in. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The FBI had built an airtight case. Bank records, text messages, emails, witness testimony from the guide she'd hired, and most damning of all, the video from my funeral, where she'd accidentally confessed. But Diana had never admitted defeat gracefully. Her defense was creative. I had to give her that. According to her lawyer, she'd been the victim here. She claimed I had orchestrated the whole thing to frame her, that I'd faked my own death to destroy her life and steal her inheritance. The insurance policy, forged by me. The text messages, planted. The offshore accounts, must have been my doing. The prosecution calls Sarah Mitchell to the stand. I walked to the witness box, feeling Diana's eyes finally fix on me with barely concealed hatred. Ms. Mitchell, the prosecutor began, please tell us about the events leading up to your alleged death. For the next hour, I laid out the whole story. The FBI's warning, the evidence they'd shown me of Diana's planning, the careful operation to catch her in the act. And why? The prosecutor asked. Did you agree to participate in this sting operation instead of simply confronting your sister? I looked directly at Diana for the first time, because I couldn't believe it was true. I needed to understand why my own sister would want me dead. Objection. Diana's lawyer shot up. Speculation about my client's intentions. Sustained, the judge ruled. The jury will disregard that last statement. But I'd seen several jurors' expressions. They'd heard what they needed to hear. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Every day revealed new details of Diana's scheme. The insurance agent testified about the forged policy documents. The hiking guide described how she paid him to lie about seeing me on the trail. Marcus, Diana's ex-boyfriend, detailed the conversations where she planned my accident. Through it all, Diana maintained her innocent act. Tears at appropriate moments. Confused looks when damning evidence was presented. Hurt glances at me, as if she couldn't understand why her beloved sister would do this to her. It might have worked, if not for the video. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played the complete recording from my funeral. The camera in my sunglasses had captured everything in perfect clarity. Diana's performance, her shock at seeing me, and most importantly, her damning words, "You're dead, I made sure." The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Diana's perfect mask cracked. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Her fingers gripped the table until her knuckles went white. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. A small sound escaped her, something between a gasp and a snarl. As the judge prepared to announce sentencing, Diana finally snapped. "You ruined everything," she screamed, turning to face me. "It was perfect. I had it all planned. You were supposed to die, and I was supposed to." "Ms. Mitchell," the judge thundered, "control yourself, or you will be removed." But Diana was beyond control. 20 years of carefully maintained facade crumbled in an instant. "You were nothing," she shrieked as bailiffs moved to restrain her. "Just a burden. A nobody. I deserved that money. I deserved." They dragged her out, her screams echoing through the courthouse. The judge called a brief recess to restore order. Agent Cooper touched my arm. "You okay?" I nodded, watching the door where Diana had disappeared. I finally got my answer. About why she did it. About who she really is. I gathered my things. And who I am. The sentencing, when it came, was severe. 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder. 10 years each for the fraud charges, to be served consecutively. No possibility of parole for at least 30 years. Diana's perfect life was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. "Ms. Mitchell, how does it feel to send your own sister to prison? Any comment on the foundation money still missing? Will you be writing a book about your experience?" I stopped at the top of the steps, considering my response carefully. "My sister died long before she tried to kill me," I said finally. "I just didn't want to see it. Today isn't about revenge or justice. It's about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts worse than any lie." 6 months later, I stood at Cascade Falls, watching the water thunder down. The place where I was supposed to die had become something of a tourist attraction after the trial. People took selfies, trying to spot where the accident was meant to happen. My tech consulting firm had flourished, ironically enough. The publicity from the trial had brought in new clients, people who appreciated someone who could spot complex fraud schemes. The insurance money had been returned, the foundation dissolved, and Diana's offshore accounts frozen. She'd lost everything: money, freedom, reputation. Her perfect image shattered beyond repair. I'd received a letter from her last week, the first contact since her sentencing. Just 2 lines. "I would have given you half, if you just died like you were supposed to. Think about that while you enjoy your victory." I'd burned the letter without responding. Some relationships couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals went too deep. My phone buzzed, Agent Cooper, checking in as she still did occasionally. "Heard from our mutual friend," she texted. "Just more poison," I replied. You know, most people would be more traumatized by all this. I looked out at the falls, thinking about strength and survival and the strange ways life tests us. "Most people," I texted back, "haven't had to attend their own funeral." A family of hikers passed by, the children pointing excitedly at the waterfall. Their mother held their hands tightly, keeping them safe from the edge. Sisters, I noticed, about the same age difference as Diana and me. "Be careful up there," I called out. "The view can be deceiving." The mother smiled gratefully, pulling her girls back from the railing. They continued up the trail, their laughter carrying on the wind. I took one last look at the falls before turning away. Diana had chosen this place to end my story. Instead, it had become the beginning of a new one. My phone buzzed again. Work this time. A potential new client, worried about financial irregularities in their family business. "I have some experience with that," I told them, walking back to my car. "Let me show you what to look for." The sun was setting as I drove away from Cascade Falls, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. In my rearview mirror, the waterfall diminished until it was just a distant roar. Some people spend their whole lives pretending to be something they're not. Diana had pretended to be the perfect sister while plotting my death. I had pretended not to see her true nature until it almost killed me. Now we were both exactly who we were meant to be. She was inmate number 247,891, serving 30 years for trying to kill her sister. And I was alive, successful, free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving. As I merged onto the highway, a familiar song came on the radio. One Diana and I used to sing as children, back when we were just sisters, before money and jealousy and murder plots complicated everything. I switched it off. Some ghosts are better left unsung. Being an identical twin is like living with a mirror that has its own agenda. For 28 years, I shared everything with my sister Madeline. Same face, same voice, same silver blonde hair that our grandmother always said marked us as true Blackwoods. But we couldn't have been more different on the inside. I'm Emma Blackwood, the twin who chose a quiet life running a small art gallery in Boston. Madeline became a high-powered investment banker in New York, collecting designer labels and wealthy boyfriends like trophies. Our parents were prouder of her, naturally. Who wouldn't prefer a daughter who made millions over one who spent her days hanging paintings? But our grandmother, Catherine, was different. She saw through the surface similarities, understood who we really were beneath our identical faces. While our parents fawned over Madeline's banking success, Grandma quietly supported my passion for art, helping me open my gallery when no one else would. "You have a gift, Emma," she'd tell me during our Sunday afternoon teas in her Victorian mansion. "You see beauty where others see only dollar signs." Those afternoons were sacred. Madeline never came. She was always too busy with work. But that was fine with me. It meant I had Grandma Catherine all to myself. Then came the call that changed everything. I was in my gallery, hanging a new collection, when my phone buzzed. My mother's voice was tight with barely controlled grief. "Emma, it's Grandma Catherine. There was an accident." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of my desk, knocking over a cup of coffee. The dark liquid spread across the pristine white surface like spilled ink. What happened? A car crash. She didn't make it. I don't remember much about the next few hours. Somehow, I made it to my apartment, packed a bag, canceled appointments. My assistant Jennifer promised to handle everything at the gallery. The drive to my grandmother's estate in the Berkshires was a blur of tears and memories. Every mile marker reminded me of another Sunday tea, another quiet conversation, another moment when Grandma Catherine had been the only person who truly saw me. I arrived to find the sprawling Victorian mansion already full of relatives. Cousins I barely knew lounged in the parlor. Aunts whispered in corners. Uncles argued about property values. My parents stood in the foyer, greeting people with practiced sadness. But Madeline was nowhere to be seen. "She's flying in from Dubai," my mother explained, smoothing her already perfect hair. "Some important client meeting she couldn't reschedule." Of course. Even our grandmother's death wouldn't disrupt Madeline's precious career. The next few days passed in a haze of funeral arrangements and family politics. I retreated to my grandmother's library whenever I could, surrounding myself with her beloved books and the faint scent of her rose perfume that still lingered in the air. That's where I was when Madeline finally arrived, 3 days after the accident. "Oh good, you're here," she said, dropping her Hermes bag on an antique table. "Have they read the will yet?" No hello, no tears. Not even a pretense of grief. "She's barely cold," I said, my voice tight with anger. Madeline rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Emma. We all knew this was coming." Grandma was old. She was 68. Details. She waved her hand dismissively. "The point is, there's $40 million at stake. Plus the house, the art collection. We need to be practical." I stared at my twin, trying to find some trace of the sister I'd grown up with. We still had the same face, but looking at her was like seeing my features arranged into a stranger's expression. The reading is tomorrow, I said finally. Mr. Harrison, Grandma's lawyer, is handling everything. Perfect. Madeline smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Get some rest, sis. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. I was too exhausted, too grief-stricken to analyze my sister's cryptic comments. That was my first mistake. The next morning, I woke early and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The house was quiet, most of the relatives still asleep in their various guest rooms. But as I passed the study, I heard voices. Everything's arranged. Madeline's voice, low and urgent, just like you asked. A male voice I didn't recognize. The papers are perfect. No one will question it. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. And the original? Destroyed, along with all the copies. As far as anyone knows, this is the only version. Good. Madeline again, satisfied. You should go. The reading's in 3 hours. I quickly stepped back as the door opened. A man in a cheap suit hurried past without seeing me, clutching a briefcase. Madeline emerged a moment later, startling when she saw me. Emma, you're up early. Couldn't sleep, I said carefully. Who was that? Oh, just someone from the bank. She adjusted her silk blouse. Boring paperwork stuff. But I'd seen the man slip something into her designer bag, something that looked suspiciously like legal documents. The will reading was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main library. Mr. Harrison, a small man with wire-rimmed glasses who'd been our grandmother's lawyer for 30 years, arranged us all in a semicircle. My parents sat together on the antique sofa. Various aunts and uncles claimed the matching armchairs. Cousins perched on ottomans or leaned against bookshelves. Madeline took a seat directly across from Mr. Harrison, her expression carefully neutral. I chose to stand by the window, next to the painting of roses that Grandma Catherine had always loved. Something felt wrong. The conversation I'd overheard, Madeline's strange behavior. Before we begin, Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his glasses, I want to express my personal condolences. Catherine was more than just a client to me. She was a dear friend. Madeline shifted impatiently. Yes, very sad. Shall we proceed? Mr. Harrison blinked, taken aback by her tone. Of course. Well, the terms are quite straightforward. Catherine was very specific about her wishes. He opened his briefcase, but Madeline interrupted. Actually, she said smoothly, I have something you should see first. She pulled out a document, the same one I'd seen the mystery man give her earlier. What's this? Mr. Harrison frowned, taking the papers. Grandma's real will, Madeline announced. Dated just 2 weeks ago. She gave it to me for safekeeping. The room erupted in whispers. I felt my heart start to pound. This can't be right, Mr. Harrison muttered, scanning the document. I drew up Catherine's will myself. She never mentioned. Obviously she changed her mind, Madeline said. As you can see, everything's perfectly legal. All the signatures are verified. I moved closer, looking over Mr. Harrison's shoulder. The will looked authentic, same legal language, same formatting. But something was wrong. The signature. It looked like Grandma's. But then I saw it. The terms of the new will were simple. The entire estate, all $40 million, plus the house and every asset, was left to Madeline Blackwood. I felt the blood drain from my face. This is a lie, I said, my voice shaking. Grandma would never. Do you have proof? Madeline challenged, her eyes glinting. Because I have a legally binding document right here. The room fell silent as everyone stared at us, identical faces locked in a battle of wills. Mr. Harrison, I turned to the lawyer desperately. You know this isn't right. You knew Grandma better than anyone. I'm sorry, Emma, he said slowly. But if this will is authenticated, my hands are tied. Madeline's smile was triumphant. Well then, I believe that settles everything. As the sole heir, I'll need everyone to vacate the premises by tomorrow morning. You can't do this, I whispered. She stood, gathering her things with practiced elegance. I already have, dear sister, and you can't prove otherwise. As the family filed out in shocked silence, I remained rooted to the spot, staring at the painting of roses. Grandma Catherine had taught me to paint those roses herself, spending countless patient hours helping me get the shadows just right. Now my twin sister had stolen everything, our grandmother's legacy, my inheritance, even my identity. Because that signature on the will, it wasn't Grandma's at all. It was mine. Being identical twins meant sharing DNA, fingerprints, and virtually indistinguishable signatures. My entire life, I'd been careful about signing documents precisely because I knew Madeline could mimic my handwriting perfectly. But I never imagined she would use my signature to forge our grandmother's will. The day after the reading, I watched from my old bedroom window as moving trucks arrived. Madeline wasted no time claiming her prize, directing workers to pack up our grandmother's antiques and artwork. Miss Blackwood? A quiet voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Agnes, our grandmother's housekeeper of 20 years, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry, Agnes. I know Madeline's asked everyone to leave. That's just it. Agnes wrung her hands nervously. There's something you need to see. She led me down to the kitchen, checking twice to ensure we weren't followed. From beneath her apron, she pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Your grandmother's diary, she whispered. She asked me to keep it safe. Said it was important you find it if anything happened to her. My hands trembled as I took the notebook. Why didn't you give this to Mr. Harrison? Because Ms. Madeline was watching him like a hawk. But that's not all. Agnes glanced around again before continuing. The accident. It wasn't random. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? The day before, your grandmother was upset. She discovered something about Ms. Madeline. Something to do with her banking work. She made some calls, said she needed to fix things. I opened the diary with shaking fingers. The last entry was dated the day before the crash. Called Marcus about M's activities at Sterling Bank. The numbers don't add up. Offshore accounts, missing client funds. She's been stealing millions. I can't stay silent. Emma deserves to know the truth about her sister. Tomorrow I'll. The entry ended there. Tomorrow never came. There's more, Agnes said. The morning of the accident, I overheard Ms. Madeline on the phone in the garden. She said something about taking care of it today and making it look accidental. The diary slipped from my fingers. Are you saying? I'm saying be careful, Miss Emma. Your sister, she's not who you think she is. A sharp voice cut through our conversation. Agnes, why aren't these boxes packed yet? Madeline stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing as she saw us together. Agnes quickly gathered some cleaning supplies and hurried out. Still here, Emma. Madeline's tone was honey-sweet poison. I thought I made it clear the house needs to be emptied. I met her gaze steadily. Did you kill her? The question hung in the air between us. Madeline's smile never wavered. What an awful thing to suggest, she said softly. Grief makes people say such terrible things. She knew about Sterling Bank, I pressed. About the missing money. Something flickered in Madeline's eyes. Surprise? Fear? But it was gone instantly. I don't know what you think you know, she said. But I suggest you leave. Now. Before you say something you'll regret. Or what? You'll arrange another accident? She stepped closer, her face, my face, inches from mine. Prove it, she whispered. Prove any of it. You can't, can you? Just like you can't prove the will is forged. It's your word against mine, sister dear. And I have $40 million worth of lawyers on my side. She was right. I had no proof. Just a diary entry, a housekeeper's statement, and horrible suspicions. But I had something else. The truth about who I was. Who we both were. You forgot one thing, Madeline, I said quietly. Grandma didn't just teach me about art. She taught me about family history. About the Blackwood legacy. Boring stories about dead relatives, she scoffed. What's your point? My point is, I know things you don't. Things about this house, about Grandma's real fortune. Things she only shared during those Sunday teas you were too busy to attend. Uncertainty crept into her expression. You're bluffing? Am I? I smiled, channeling her own cold confidence. Guess you'll find out. I walked out of the kitchen, feeling her eyes boring into my back. At the front door, I paused. Oh, and Madeline? Don't touch the painting of roses in the library. Some art is worth more than money. It was a shot in the dark, but I saw fear flash across her face. She knew something about that painting, something she didn't want me to discover. In my car, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to an old friend from art school who now worked as an authenticator for major auction houses. Sarah, I need you to look into something. A painting of roses, circa 1940s, artist unknown. The second call was to a private investigator recommended by one of my gallery clients. I need everything you can find on Sterling Bank's offshore accounts. Focus on transactions authorized by Madeline Blackwood. Finally, I called Mr. Harrison. Meet me tomorrow, I said when he answered. There's something you need to know about Grandma's real will. Most people think revenge takes a long time, but sometimes justice strikes like lightning, fast, bright, and impossible to escape. It took exactly 3 days to destroy everything Madeline had stolen. I met Mr. Harrison at a small cafe far from the estate. His hands shook slightly as he read Grandma's diary. My God, he whispered. I knew something was wrong. But this, I need your help, I said. The painting in the library. Did Grandma ever mention anything special about it? He looked up sharply. She did, actually. About a month ago, she had me update her will. Said something about important papers being where the roses never fade. My heart raced. The painting. I'd always wondered why Grandma insisted it never be moved, never be cleaned by anyone but her. Mr. Harrison, I need you to stall the estate transfer. Just for 24 hours. He nodded grimly. I'll file some paperwork. Technical errors that need reviewing. But Emma, be careful. If what this diary suggests is true. I know, I said quietly. My sister is capable of murder. Back at my hotel, messages waited from both my contacts. Sarah, the art authenticator, confirmed my suspicions about the painting. The private investigator's findings about Sterling Bank were even more explosive. I took a deep breath and made one final call to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. That night, I waited until 3 a.m. before returning to the estate. The security code hadn't been changed. Madeleine always did underestimate me. The house was dark, empty except for the furniture Madeleine hadn't yet moved. In the library, moonlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the painting of roses. With trembling fingers, I felt along its heavy gilt frame. There, a slight catch, a hidden spring. The painting swung away from the wall like a door, revealing a small safe built into the wall behind it. I smiled, remembering all those Sunday afternoons when Grandma taught me to paint roses. She hadn't just been teaching art. She'd been showing me exactly where this safe was located. The combination was simple: my birthday, not Madeleine's. She'd been born 2 minutes later. This was how Grandma had always told us apart, by remembering who came first. Inside the safe lay a stack of documents: bank records, surveillance photos, and a USB drive. But most importantly, there was another will. The real will, dated just 3 days before Grandma's death, with a letter attached. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've discovered what Madeleine has been doing at Sterling Bank. The stolen money, the fake accounts, all of it. I've gathered proof, but she knows I know. I fear what she might do. I'm leaving everything to you because you're the only one who understands what truly matters. The money, the house, they're just things. But integrity, truth, justice, these are the real Blackwood legacy. All my love, Grandma Catherine. P.S. Give the USB drive to the FBI. They'll know what to do. At that moment, lights flooded the library. Madeleine stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage. "How did you know?" she demanded. "Because I paid attention," I said calmly, despite my pounding heart. "All those Sunday teas you missed. All those boring family stories you ignored. Grandma wasn't just sharing memories. She was leaving clues." "Give me those papers," she snarled, stepping forward. "It's too late," I replied. "The FBI already has copies of everything. They're probably at Sterling Bank right now, seizing records of all your offshore accounts." Her face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Her hands shook as she read the message. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." "Yes," I said quietly. "It's over, Madeleine. The fraud, the fake will, and—" I held up Grandma's diary. The truth about her death. She lunged for me, but never reached me. FBI agents emerged from the shadows, where they'd been waiting all along. I watched as they led my sister away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally shattered. The aftermath was a whirlwind of headlines. Bank Herarrest FORFRAUD and MURDER. Twin sisters, inheritance battle, REVAL, DEGY Heskijin, Sterling Bank SKADAL, Bly LLHONS, in CLIENT Philindes messing. The truth came out quickly after that. Madeleine had been stealing from clients for years, hiding the money in offshore accounts. When Grandma discovered her scheme, Madeleine arranged the accident, not realizing Grandma had already documented everything. The forged will was just her final attempt to gain control of all evidence against her. She never imagined the real proof would be hidden behind a simple painting of roses. 1 year later, I stood in the library again, now restored to its former glory. Madeline was serving 20 years for fraud and murder. The stolen money had been returned to Sterling Bank's clients, and Grandma's real will had been executed exactly as she intended. I kept the house, turning part of it into an art gallery showcasing young artists. The painting of roses still hung in its place of honor, no longer hiding secrets, but serving as a reminder. Sometimes justice blooms in unexpected places. Agnes still worked as housekeeper, now more family than employee. Mr. Harrison helped manage the charitable foundation I'd established with half of my inheritance, supporting arts education for underprivileged children. "Your grandmother would be proud," he told me one afternoon, watching local kids take art lessons in what used to be the formal dining room. I smiled, touching the locket I now wore, the one Grandma had always worn during our Sunday teas. Inside was a tiny painted rose, a reminder that beauty and truth go hand in hand. "She knew," I said softly. "She knew that someday the truth would come out. That's why she left all those clues, all those little breadcrumbs for me to follow." "And Madeline," he asked, "do you ever visit her?" I shook my head. Some twins grow apart. Some were never truly connected to begin with. She chose her path, just as I chose mine. Later that evening, I sat in Grandma's library, my library now, and opened her diary to the last page. Below her final entry, I had added my own. "Dear Grandma, justice has been served. The roses still bloom, the truth still shines, and your legacy lives on. Not in money or property, but in the lessons you taught me, that art can reveal truth, that patience defeats greed, and that real wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in integrity. Thank you for showing me the way. Love always, Emma." Outside, the sun set over the Berkshire Hills, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Sometimes karma doesn't just strike, it blooms,